Hello, everybody, and welcome to the showcase. My name's Sean Martin. I'd like to introduce drummer extraordinaire from Hull, Mr. Ken Opie.
Hello.
How are you,
Sure.
Ken?
Not so bad today, to be honest. The
Not so
weather's
bad.
miserable.
Well, being in Thailand, and you being in miserable Hull, you can only expect that, Ken.
Yeah, it's particularly cold at the moment and rainy, crappy outside.
So, Ken, let's get back to the business. You've been in the business how many years?
Since 1975, really. So how long is that?
Doing your maths.
50 years, isn't it? Yeah.
My God, Ken, you don't look
Yeah.
that old. Now tell me, what got you started? Because I remember living quite near you. I was always fascinated. I was just a guitar vocalist, and somebody told me, you should learn drums. And there's a guy around the corner who does drum lessons called Mr. Ken Opie, and I found out where you was. I went to your house, and I saw you playing, and I thought, there's no way I can ever play like that. What got you started, Ken?
To be honest, when you're 12, 13, you're listening to records. I remember I particularly liked Blockbuster from the Sweet. Remember that one that got to number one? And I actually was the first record that I ever bought. I was listening to the B-side, and there's some quite serious drumming on the B-side there. And it was something that I found that I could do. I remember tapping on the desks at school, and people went playing the Cozy Pole Dance with the Devil, and people were looking amazed as though, how can you do that? And I'm thinking, well, it's really quite easy. And it is. Ask any drummer. I mean, the Cozy Pole thing's quite easy, really, technically. And I started playing on settees with rulers that hurt my hands. And so I snapped a piece of doweling that I found at my mother's and made some drumsticks out of that and wrecked the settee, because I could play on the arm. Those plasticky settees with like a cushioned headrest. Cushioned headrest. If I hit it hard, it was like a bass drum. And if I hit it soft, it was like a hi-hat. So I've like bass drum and hi-hat on there. I made myself a set of buckets that carted around and played with some guitarists here and there. And so it was something that I found that I could do, and it came quite easily to me, to be honest.
Do you think you've got to have some kind of rhythm to be able to be a drummer?
I think a good sense of time, like a seriously good sense of time, because I've met people who've been playing for years who can't play a tambourine, for instance, and it's like amazing that they can't quite grasp that, and they've got some like blind spots in the rhythm. And I always found that when I was teaching, I discovered that people are a little bit different and they can't, always hear something straight away. So I didn't find it difficult, to be honest. I mean, I took to the practicing and the technique, because I'm quite a strong-willed person. I won't give in, and no matter how difficult it was, I would always come back to it. And that's what I tell my students, that it's all right to quit out frustration, but we must come back to it. It's, because quite often spending 10 minutes utterly frustrated and then throwing your sticks down, as long as you come back and keep doing that, you can often achieve more than a 2 or 3 hour practice session, if you know what I mean, where you're unhappy.
Yeah, I understand that. Now, time moves on very quickly, and we're both seasoned pros. But taking us back in time, I won't say how many years, Ken, but can you remember your first gig?
Your first gig?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can, yeah. Because I joined this band, and they had a manager. The singer was 21 years old, and it was like a semi-pro band with loads of work. And they had, I don't know if you ever heard of a drummer called Ian Hodgson.
I don't recall.
He used to do lessons and stuff, and he played with, I think he played with Ken Dodd and various people like that. He's like, went to the Leeds College, and he was the drummer before me, and I hadn't heard of him at the time. But to be honest, I can remember he did half the set at St Andrew's Club, and I did the other half of the set, and I was like a young kid, and I was like snorting, like a bull in a pen waiting for them to open the gate, like,
Let me add some.
raring to go. And I never really, I always had loads of confidence, and didn't really. I was too young and stupid to even think that. You know what I mean? I was just full of what I was doing.
Mm.
So yeah, I just I've always been interested in practicing, getting good. I was one of the few musicians I knew who never owned a metronome. I used to play along with records, etc. But so I was a little bit wary when I first played with the click track in the studio, but it was no problem really. And
So can you kind of like done this? Is this being your sole profession? I know you dabble with PCs and technology and things like that. You're quite a clever man, but would you say you've consistently performed as a drummer most of your life?
I did have a spell after a particularly unhappy episode in around about 1994, where I went into IT sort of full time, and it was only 2000. I did a couple of things with Johnny Scott, and yeah, not for very long though, just a little dip your toe in the water type thing, and backed an artist once, an old friend, but mostly since '94 till 2003, I didn't really play, not really, until I
No.
joined the band that I'm still working a little bit with now.
We'll talk about that in a minute, Ken, but have you ever been a resident drummer in a club backing artists?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Tell us
A,
about
f-
that.
a few places. When I had my centre parting, imagine a 22-year-old with a centre parting and long hair past his shoulders, and then playing with Muriel, bless her, she was lovely, on the organ at Van Leer Club. I was there for a few years. I used to do a lot of midweek work as well with Johnny Ember and people like that. You remember Brian? So I was always working, but I ended up, when not being in a regular band, I found myself, I was at Van Leer for, I remember a vocalist coming back and he said, "Oh, it's been about a year and a half." And I thought, Jesus, I can't believe I've been here that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they used to take the mick out of me. Vocalists would come up and dedicate this song to the drummer, take the ribbon from your hair, stuff like that. But
But
yeah, it's a bit soul destroying at times. But
yeah, but them days, Ken, clubs was open 7 nights a week, some clubs, and you
yeah,
got more work. Yeah, maybe soul destroying, but I suppose you learnt a lot from it and you developed your skill. Let
not so much the clubs, no, but Telstar Club was good when I was resident there for a couple of years. That was good
Okay.
because it was like a proper stage, monitors, proper musicians, even reading music and stuff like that. Instead of sometimes tapping along to the Birdie song and things like that. I'm thinking, what am I doing here? Just you know,
Them's the days, Ken. I'd like to move on, Ken, because I want to talk to you about now, and I've got to know you more now than ever before because we're doing some work together. When I say
yeah,
work, we're songwriting, and you're involved with a band called Breakthrough. And the band is not a working band, but it's a band put together for developing original music.
yeah.
How does that fit your? Is that something you really like doing?
Yeah, really, yeah. I mean, if you were to work the club scene, the pro circuit, in Sheffield, Rotherham, but nobody wants to hear original material. And so
True.
the only other really outlet for original material are places like the Welly Club and the Adelphi, which is a joke. They pay 50 quid. They're all just surrounded by chaps, and it's like very low rent, shall we say. So I'm trying not to criticise these places because obviously young bands need places to hone the craft and stuff. But for what we're doing, the quality of what we're doing, we're no good in these sort of places. But luckily,
That's
we've got a lot of musical firepower in the band.
mm,
Like
mm, yeah. And
there's
Ken,
no weak links.
no, it's good, Ken, and you're also in a band where you perform live with Claire.
With Claire
Claire's also singer in
from
Break.
Breakthrough, yeah.
Tell me about that band.
That
Let
band,
me have a gig.
Well, they're like family to me now, as you can imagine. You know,
What's the
with
name of the band, Ken?
the name of the band's Union. We used to be called Southside, and we had a couple of little changes here and there, but for the most part, we're all good at what we do, um, and it's just high quality commercial material, really, which I do like doing because there's a challenge there that you don't get with original material. People, quite often, you'll get, little bands that have just started up thinking that they're superior because they don't do covers as though it's the lowest of the low. When in fact, if you take on someone else's material, you're opening yourself up to criticism and comparison straight away. Whereas if you just make up a load of nonsense that may well be a load of crap, what's that going to be held up against? So it is more challenging. I mean, Chris in Breakthrough, or in the band we're talking about that we're in at the moment, the original. I was in a band with Chris there, and we did work type for a long time. We used to do live. We used to do Bohemian Rhapsody with all the opera section and everything. Now that's an example of, it's not an original song, but let's see how many of these original bands can take on something like that, if you know what I mean. And we rehearsed that in my flat for about a year and a half, just vocals in my living room before we even took it to rehearsals. And I remember the very first time we gigged it because we're all taking notes from each other and swapping around. And Chris Brown cleverly worked it all out because given operatic type harmonies, you usually need at least 5 voices. We only had 4, so I was swapping with the girl singer and coming off it. And it was quite an elaborate thing where if somebody, like if I sing my last note a little bit flat, then the next note that comes in afterwards, suddenly the keyboards are sharp or something like that, if you know what I mean, when Chris hit. So there was all that kind of pressure where, I can remember the first time we gigged it, I don't think he could have managed to get a sig paper between the cheeks of my arse, I think, during that one. But, yeah, it became quite a feature point. But that's just an example of how, taking on commercial material properly can be more challenging at times than, just making up a load of nonsense, if you know what I mean.
Let's tell our viewers the advantages of being a professional drummer.
The disadvantage is the lack of money and getting work and stuff. Plus there's...
You can't do it full time, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, I mean, you could do, but I mean, I'm not doing it full time at the moment, although it's taken up a lot of my time. I'm supposedly retired now, so I can pick and choose. Plus, I wouldn't want to be on the road all the time at my age because it grinds you down. I mean, it even kills off a lot of the young bands, doesn't it? And so the cocaine and everything, and all that, where do they get all that energy from? Turns out they don't. They just end up coking themselves to death. So I'm quite pleased to still be playing at the level I'm playing at my age. It's a little bit more tiring.
I mean, I would suspect most of the professional artists, we're talking about Hull in Humberside, so for the viewers that are outside this area, Mr. Ken Opie has been a professional drummer for many years and is highly respected in the business. And nowadays, there are so many inspiring young drummers wanting to be like you, Ken. Does the kit make a difference? I mean, do you think that's important? Do you think having a good kit makes a better sound? Do you think having an electric kit now, or what's your opinion on this kind of situation?
Basically, I can remember that my first kit was a Del Rey, which was cheap, 50 quid, and it was, it's like somewhere between a pretend kit and a real one. But basically, as you develop your tuning skills, I mean, right now I could make a really cheap, crappy kit sound better than a super top of the range Yamaha or something like that in the hands of an ordinary person. Just with the skills that you learn over years. I can remember in the early days, I didn't know how to get the sound I wanted, but I knew what I wanted. I should drive the neighbours crazy and stuff like that. And I think it's like, as you know yourself, playing guitar, as long as the guitar's not holding you back in terms of it having a ridiculously terrible action or something, it doesn't really matter the quality of the guitar. And in the early stages, does it really? Because you're developing your skills. I've noticed that the top players in the world are so much better than they used to be in the 70s and 80s. And there's always been amongst drummers and some bass players an aversion to practicing. They're all hiding behind this less is more, less is more. What they don't understand is less is only more if you've got more in the first place. Otherwise it's just less. And there's a lot of bashers out there and people using bad technique and stuff like that. And it's always been a case of people just don't want to practice, do they?
Well, they don't, Ken. And sadly, it's the same as when you teach guitar. I'm sure Chris Brown would say the same. People don't want to, they'll pay for the lesson, but they don't want to
telling them
practice.
the same thing every week. It's like,
But Ken, sadly, technology's taking over drummers. How does that make you feel when now a band can go out without a drummer and just use a drum machine?
Yeah, I mean, that's been going on since to the end of the 90s. It started becoming possible at a level never before, because drum machines before that were terrible, weren't they? And there still are a little bit. I mean, I can hear a drum machine, no matter how well programmed, I can tell. Because at the end of the day, a human drummer will attempt to play perfectly in time. But because it's human, you can't really do that. It's a bit like the human voice. You can't hit, like the ruining the human voice at the moment with these auto-tune and auto-correct and stuff like that, because they're destroying the soulful part that lives in the middle of pure accuracy. So whereas a human drummer will try to play perfectly and fail, a computer will try and play like a human being and get nowhere near it. It can't help but be perfect. And there are humanized functions that you can add in, and there's a certain amount you can do, but at the end of the day, you can't really replace the proper instruments, can you? Not really.
No. So, what would you say to our aspiring drummers out there on this channel? What tip would you give?
Make sure that you take lessons, but not from somebody who should be taking lessons themselves, which is normally the case. It's like, otherwise it's just like me trying to teach somebody who's not very tall how to be 6'1". You just can't do it just because they've found a way around something. That's not the, ideally someone who can read music, who can teach technique, somebody who knows the stuff a little bit, dig into it. And if at times when it gets too frustrating to practice, put it down, come back to it. It's the coming back to it that is the main thing,
Yeah.
and that's really the heart and soul of everything. I could say the same for, I can remember when I was a painter and decorator with my dad, people would always be, I used to do some of that in the 20s as well. And I found that whenever I took anyone to help me, they wanted to go straight to the gloss brush,
Yeah.
and basically, with decorating like any other, like especially music, the end result is proportionate to the amount of preparation that you put in the first place. So instead of spending loads of time sandpapering and getting the, it's the same with car. When you're respraying a car, you can't just go straight to the paint. The amount of preparation you put in is a big part of where you end up. And that's where practicing comes in, and that's where people let themselves down, in my opinion.
Correct. I mean, that's the perfect way of saying it. Sadly, Ken, as time, we're in the 20th century, it's very difficult now to become famous.
Oh, yeah.
We've got no record companies anymore. It's all about money. Do you think the business is dying, or would you encourage people to pick up the sticks and carry on drumming?
Well, I would, if it's something you enjoy doing. It's just sad that there's not as many outlets for live musicians. Like when I first started in 1975, you could get 5 gigs a week. I was in a 5-piece band, and by the time it got to the 90s, I was in a pro band, and we're having Sundays missing here and there and stuff like that, and a kid couldn't get a Friday now and again. And it's, I think Clubland's really pretty much dead now, although there are a few still going. I mean, these days you can't make the kind of money you used to make in the 70s and 80s because the industry has changed.
So it's got to be hot, yeah.
It's always been corrupt, as we know, as we're finding out more and more. I mean, if you look into the stories of some of the, look at what happened to Prince.
Still is. Yeah.
There's still a school of thought that reckons, because when he died, he was worth more money dead to his record company, and he was causing them a lot of trouble at the time. And they did find that propofol stuff that killed him in the wrong medicine bottles.
Yeah.
So it was in a
I'm
lot
sure
of pain.
we can tell many stories about
Of course,
about these type of things. But what I'd like to say, Ken, is I don't want to take too much of your time. Thank you. It's been really good talking to you. For our viewers, this is the infamous Ken Opie. Ken resides in Hull and he plays in the band.
I'm also playing with a band called Strut at the moment, doing disco stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Doing, with Jim Walton. You remember Jim Walton?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm working with them. In fact, I'm rehearsing with them tonight, so I'm doing a bit. I'm keeping myself busy.
Yeah. So if you're in the Hull area and you'll see what's the band, the original band?
Yeah, I'm not sure that it won't be until middle of next year, I think, because we're still getting it off the ground.
But what's the name of the two bands that you're in at the moment?
The band that I'm working with Jim at the moment is called Strut. And as I say, I'm working with Union, of course.
Union,
and Breakthrough, which is the project that we're the creative side of the project. And basically, with YouTube these days, there's a lot. You don't need record companies so much. So although you're not making as much money, there is something there that you can show.
Yeah, well, I'm going off subject a little bit here, but I did it. I know we're not launching our debut song for next year, but I put it on TikTok in Thailand and I got 15,000 views in 12 hours. So that's,
I'll tell you what, Sean, I don't know.
Power of social media now, Ken.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if I've told you this, but a friend of mine who's been a serious musician for a lot of years, etc., he heard that Christmas song and declared it was the best Christmas song he's ever heard in his life. So, I mean, that's,
Ken, it's about money, If you've got money, you don't go one. Without money, there's no record companies anymore interested in listening to demos.
Yeah, the good thing is, though, we can promote ourselves these days, which wasn't possible before.
Well,
so that's
25th of December, it'll be on the Bentley radio. So I'm sure that people will. Well, Ken, look, thanks for your time and keep on hitting those sticks, Ken. It's an absolute pleasure working with such a professional as yourself.
Thank you very much.
We'll have to arrange another one of these shows maybe later on in the year.
Okay, sure.
All the best.
Nice to speak to you. Cheers.
Take care. Bye, Ken. For our viewers, I'd like you to please subscribe, hit that bell, and press the like button. Thank you. Thank you, Ken Opie.